She pointed her phone at me, voice shaking, and barked, 5 seconds to leave or I'm calling HOA security. So I took a slow sip of my lemonade, leaned back, and asked, do you want to call them before or after you call the imaginary SWAT team? That shut her up for a beat, and that was the quiet before the parade started. It was a lazy Sunday, the kind where a book, a cold drink, and a porch shade feel like all the government I need emphasis on my porch. This yard is mine, deeded and fenced long before a clipboard and a pastel tracksuit ever decided to run the cul-de-sac. I wasn't part of the neighborhood association. My lot predates their bylaws. That fact would have settled most people, but Karen, that's what people called her, wore self-appointed authority like perfume. She wasn't even Karen on paper. She had a fancier name that sounded like it belonged on a socialite invite, but Karen fit her pastel tracksuit, oversized sunglasses, that voice that carries across fences like a foghorn. She walked up to the property line and didn't say hello. She just glared like I'd stolen her mailbox and said, "You're not supposed to be here." I laughed. I mean, come on, I live here. Come on. She accused me of being a squatter, of being one of those fake security types. And then, because the universe likes absurdity, she announced she was calling neighborhood patrol. Chad, a shirtless, sunburnt man with wraparound sunglasses and a golf cart, rolled up with a megaphone like this was a backyard revival. "Sir, you are trespassing on HOA-monitored property," he declared into the void. For a second, I checked for hidden cameras, because surely this was a prank. I wasn't kidding when I said I had black SUVs come and go some days, part of my job's awkward glamour. I work with sensitive operations that sometimes require a detail. It's not James Bond, it's paperwork and boring briefings, but it comes with people in suits and earpieces. Karen had seen the cars and sewn together a conspiracy. Before I could explain, she was filming me and spitting accusations into the phone like it was a sermon. Then the hum I'd been expecting rolled up. Two men stepped out, suits, sunglasses, the kind of calm that's not an act. One of them, Rivera, looked like he'd been through worse than lawn disputes and handled them with a flat, practiced patience. He told Karen to step away. She blinked, then scoffed, "This is fake. You're actors." And when the second SUV pulled up, Homeland Security on the door, Chad looked like he'd seen something supernatural and backed his cart into the bushes. Instead of calming, Karen doubled down. She challenged badges, sniffed at credentials, waved her phone like it could summon the internet gods to back her up. She held town hall meetings in her yard, set up a folding table and donuts, printed flyers, alarmist enough to make a used book conspiracy look quaint, protect our neighborhood from government infiltration. She had arrows on a hand-drawn map pointing at my satellite dish like it was a mind control relay. One arrow targeted a garden hose. The absurdity made me want to laugh and cry at the same time. She convened a vote, because of course she did, to evict me. A dozen people in her backyard. Two half-hearted hands raised a jelly donut eater frozen mid-chew. She declared victory anyway, ordered Chad to draft an HOA ban, and posted live updates. Rivera, who had the patience of a saint and the bluntness of someone who's seen actual danger, started documenting. He walked the line between de-escalation and protocol. "You are interfering with a federally monitored property," he told her. "Continued obstruction will result in detainment." Things escalated theatrically. Karen invited the press, real local reporters, who, to their credit, showed up with skeptical eyes and microphones, then tried escorting them to my fence like she was guiding them through some secret base. Rivera politely asked for credentials and pointed out the property line. The cameraman backed away when he saw the official badges. The live feed cut off and the antenna on the news van folded in defeat. Her tent, her signs, her truth zone stayed up for a while longer, but the audience thinned. Here's when the story took the turn. Nobody in the front row saw coming while she was performing her one-woman crusade. Someone in the background was looking at HOA ledgers. The kind of thing most of us avoid, unless we're bored or nosy. A spreadsheet receipts a trail of community improvements that always seem to favor Karen's lawn. Plainclothes investigators showed up days later with a binder, a polite knock, and papers that made her go pale without the usual shouting match. It turned out that while she was accusing me of being a deep state actor, she had been siphoning HOA funds into her own projects. A second hot tub under community hydrotherapy landscaping upgrades, labeled as neighborhood beautification, emergency signage written off as defense equipment. The accusation that she'd once leveled at a satellite dish that my yard was some surveillance center was a projection of her own financial tinkering. Karma, when it has a sense of humor, comes with paperwork. The next act unraveled quickly. She was arrested for trespassing after blatantly crossing the marked federal boundary with a live stream rolling yes, but the real kicker was the financial inquiry. The IRS and financial crimes folks served her with paperwork for misappropriation. The tent came down, the folding chairs were folded, the donuts were gone. The neighborhood, which had been an audience to theater, suddenly looked at her like an ex-friend you don't return texts to. Meanwhile, the people who had watched the whole circus, the neighbors who used to gossip behind hedges, started to laugh again. Not meanly, at least not for long, but with relief. A bench showed up under my tree a few weeks later, a smooth stone with "He stayed" etched in and beneath it in tiny letters, property owner since 2010. Someone carved a small wooden plaque that read Karen Free Zone. Nobody signed their name to it, and that's what made it perfect. There was an almost surreal reconciliation. Rivera's team hosted a neighborhood barbecue in my yard. Agents flipping burgers, neighbors bringing potato salad, kids chasing balloons while a tiny drone lazily checked the perimeter because protocol never goes fully on vacation. People came cautiously at first, then, with the kind of ease that says, okay, the weirdness is over. The Parkers, a retired couple who moved into Karen's old house, baked muffins and organized a chili cook-off. They were the antidote to a year of chaos, polite, apologetic, and more interested in bake sales than bylaws. What do I take from this first home is not a costume. There's power in patience and power in standing your ground without escalating. I could have stormed, yelled, sued, or staged my own counter-spectacle. Instead, I took notes, called a number, and let protocol do its job. It's not that the law is always righteous, far from it, but in this case, the weight of evidence folded neatly into common sense. Second, the people who love power for the sake of power often trip on their own lies. Karen's moral fury was a theater for personal profit. Once the receipts showed a different script, her chorus fell silent. That's a discouraging truth about authority. Sometimes the loudest guardian is guarding a bank account, not a neighborhood. Finally, community is resilient, if you let it be. After the spectacle came down, people started to repair fences, literally and figuratively. They apologized, laughed, organized, and slowly trusted one another again. A neighborhood that once whispered accusations now swapped recipes. I was offered a seat on the new HOA board as a consultant. I said no. I'd had enough committees to last a lifetime, but I did accept the bench inscription in the shade. So here's the thing I want you to chew on. When someone shouts loud enough to drown out every other voice, do you assume they're shouting for everyone's good? Or do you ask who is getting paid while the megaphone blares? Justice in this story wasn't instant, it wasn't perfect, and it mostly came from people paying attention, following the paperwork, and not being afraid to say, hold on, show me a receipt. Now I want to hear from you. What would you have done? Would you have stayed in the yard, lemonade in hand, and let the universe take care of the rest? Or would you have packed up and left the street to its own theatrics? Tell me the worst HOA moment you've seen, or the time someone tried to make themselves mayor of a block of houses. Share it, because honestly, I'd rather hear your stories than relive Karen's. And if you walk by my bench sometime, sit down, take a breath, and maybe keep your megaphone in the closet. Some battles are won by noise. The better ones are won by patience, paperwork, and a well-placed lawn chair.